Hoobastank would release back-to-back platinum albums in the early 2000s, but their biggest hit, The Reason, would result in some calling the band sellouts, and it would also overshadow a lot of their other music, which sounded much harder. In today's video, let's talk about the story behind the song and the backlash.
Not a perfect person.
The story of Hoobastank begins with frontman Doug Robb, whose parents are from Japan, and guitarist Dan Estrin. Both members would end up picking up the guitar around the age of 13 or 14. While it was long rumored that Robb and Estrin met at a Battle of the Bands competition in high school, they'd actually known each other for quite some time before that, despite playing in different bands. Robb and Estrin didn't have a lot in common though, at least musically. Robb would tell a Connecticut paper that he didn't like the music Estrin was playing or his musical tastes. Estrin was really into James Brown and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Robb felt the guitarist used the wah-wah pedal too much. Robb, meanwhile, was into groups like Tool, Faith No More, Mr. Bungle, Alice in Chains, as well as the David Lee Roth era of Van Halen. At the same time, though, Robb would admit his guilty pleasure was Amy Grant. He was also a huge Fiona Apple fan. But apart from their musical differences, they would form a really strong friendship and decided to start their own band after graduating high school around 1994 in Agora Hills. Recruit a bassist, Markku Lappalainen, and drummer Chris Hess through the classified ads in the paper The Recycler. Hoobastank soon started playing shows around LA in different clubs. Hoobastank would release their first LP in 1998 titled They Sure Don't Make Basketball Shorts Like They Used To. Hoobastank's debut album would combine metal, ska, and funk, with them even having two saxophone players.
Teach your point of view. Concrete surrounds you. It used to be a field with a tree well.
The band's initial pressing of 2,500 copies they made for the record would end up selling out. Hoobastank would end up shopping around their first album to different labels, both big and small, with some showing interest and even paying for the band to record some new material, but no one ended up pulling the trigger on signing them. And it was at one point the band were even thinking that maybe they should go get real jobs because no one would probably sign them. But instead, they made some major changes. They ditched their horn players, they got a manager, and they started recording new material, just vocals, drums, and guitars, keeping it simple. It would result in the group writing the tracks Up and Gone, Hello Again, and Ready For You. These songs would help the group nab a recording contract with Island Records in August of 2000. So you're probably wondering, what does Hoobastank even mean? Well, honestly guys, I have no idea. And the reason I say that is because for a lot of the early interviews they gave for their major label debut, they gave different answers to different outlets they were being interviewed by. One answer was that it was a name for someone from California who has a shoe fetish. Another was that it was a street name in Germany. While another answer was that it was the middle name of their bass player. My personal favorite was that it was the H in Jesus H. Christ. In reality, it seemed like they thought of the name spur of the moment, thinking that nobody else would have it. Hoobastank would release their self-titled major label debut in November of 2001. The lead single, Crawling in the Dark, would be their breakthrough hit. The introspective single would be the catalyst that helped kickstart the sales of their album after LA station K-Rock started playing the song, resulting in it reaching number 3 on the Modern Rock Tracks chart and number 7 on the Mainstream Rock Tracks chart. It would also be a crossover hit, peaking at number 68 on the Hot 100. But Crawling in the Dark wouldn't be their most successful song from the album. Their second single, Running Away, would be the biggest song off the record, peaking at number 2 on the Billboard Modern Rock Tracks chart, and it was also a crossover hit, peaking at number 44 on the Hot 100 chart. Hoobastank would end up returning in November of 2003 with their album The Reason, a record that was both a blessing and a curse. Prior to the record's release, the band submitted what they thought was the finished album to their label, who thought there were no singles on the album, and so they asked Hoobastank to go back and write a few more tunes. But based on the interview the band gave to the All Good Things podcast with Jason Nash, they made it seem like The Reason may have been finally finished around this time. Hoobastank didn't really think the title track was anything special, and it was pretty normal for them to have a few ballads on each of their records, while also feeling their harder rocking tunes represented the band better. The first single released from The Reason would be the track Out of Control, which was a modest hit, peaking at number 16 on the mainstream rock tracks chart. The song would be about opening your eyes after being blinded or devoted to something. The record, according to Rob, would contain several songs that dealt with religion and his lack of interest in it. Then, at one point, shortly after the album's release in November of 2003, the label was considering what to do next. Do they keep pushing the first single, something the band wanted to do, or do they release a second single, which they wanted the title track to be?
But I continue learning.
It would turn out that a radio station in Utah started playing the title track, and it slowly started to pick up steam. The band would end up flying to New York to meet with their label to push for Out of Control to continue to be marketed. But ultimately, their record label convinced the band to release The Reason as a second single. The Reason would be a multi-format hit, peaking at number 4 on the mainstream rock tracks chart and number 2 on the Hot 100 chart. The single would spend an impressive 38 weeks on the charts, and it soon became the second most played song on radio, only trailing Usher's tune Yeah. The song, according to Billboard magazine, was the only rock song in the past several years to reach the top 2 spots on the Hot 100 chart. The song would also get a massive boost when it appeared in the series finale of the TV show Friends, which was watched by over 50 million people. But Rob would admit that he wasn't one of those 50 million people who watched the show, and he was more interested in having the band's music featured in an episode of The Simpsons. The Reason would end up being one of the fastest songs written by both Estrin and Rob, with its origins dating back to the band's previous tour. Estrin would tell Us Weekly that he was living at his mom's house and was, and I quote, constantly just working on music. One day when sitting in the guest room, I came up with something on guitar, recalling it was somewhat unique or different to what I had been coming up with. Or maybe it was an evolution of what I'd been doing already, because the riff on a song from the first record, Crawling in the Dark, it's not terribly different. I found these other chords and just started going between these things that spoke to me. As for the lyrics, they aren't about a particular person, but rather from a series of lyrics, poems, and phrases that were stitched together by Rob over the years. Rob would go on to tell Us Weekly, the song is about my own issues of messing up and having to readjust my own behavior to make things work. The title track's success would help push their album to go double platinum, peaking at number 3 on the charts, and it also earned the band a slew of Grammy nominations. But the band members themselves were mixed on the record's success, not being happy with The Reason, comparing the song's success to the group Extreme, who had a lot of success with the song More Than Words. Both songs weren't really representative of each band's work. They also feuded with their label over the videos for the record, initially wanting to create a trilogy, starting with The Reason, going into the song Same Direction, which would feature cameos from Linkin Park's Chester Bennington, Kanye West, and Good Charlotte's Joel Madden. The idea was the end of the trilogy would be made into the music video for Disappear, but their label pushed the band to do a boy meets girl, girl meets boy storyline. Hoobastank would tell Grammy.com that they wanted to do an ultra-violent Matrix-type action video with a doomed bank robbery, which resulted in all the band members dying. The label obviously rejected this idea, and only 2 of the videos are related. Some would also peg Hoobastank as a one-hit wonder, which really wasn't accurate. It was during a 2004 interview with the South Florida Sentinel, Rob would reveal that the band's audience size nearly tripled just because of the popularity of The Reason, lamenting, "We're not a pop band." Rob would tell the Oshkosh Western about the success of The Reason and how it changed their audiences, saying, "They were all our rock fans, then 13-year-old girls and their parents, which is great. It was such a different experience, but that does alienate some of our more fickle rock fans you might have."
And the reason is you.
The band would even state that on their own message boards, they were frequently labeled as sellouts by their own fans. While 2002 may have resulted in Hoobastank being one of the breakout acts of the year, 2004 saw MTV's then president, Van Toffler, referring to Hoobastank as one of the rock stories of the year. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you have suggestions for future topics, use the link in the description box below. We'll see you again, Rock Your Stories. Take care.